Tell us, please, for 15 years you were a disciple of Osho's disciple. And so what's the major lesson that he gave you?
I think the major lesson was to completely change my life from somebody like everybody else who's looking out in the world to somebody who looks inside. So this was the big lesson, and this happened through meditation, mainly through meditation, different techniques of meditation. And he talked a lot about self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
To become aware of what's going on inside. So, you know, my focus changed from being busy in the world to looking inside.
And what did you see when you looked inside yourself?
A lot of thoughts in the beginning. So I had a busy mind, you know. I was coming to him when I was 30 years old, and like any 30-year-old, I was busy with trying to, you know, make it in the world. I was, in those days, I was an engineer and an architect, so I had, you know, this kind of a background. I occasionally looked for a girlfriend, you know, this kind of normal things, you know. And so I was busy in the world with a lot of thoughts, a lot of desires, a lot of frustrations, a lot of worries and thinking and all this stuff. So when I first looked inside, I didn't really like it very much.
And the idea of community, where it came from?
The idea of community, well, Osho had an ashram, and this was a very vibrant community, very vibrant. I came there in the beginning of the 70s. It was following on from the, you know, the crazy 60s, where everybody was living in communities and doing all their things. And so there was a lively, very international community, and I was part of this community for some time.
And okay, right now you have 3 houses in Spain, Germany and Ukraine. And interesting thing that the spiritual level of people who live in Ukraine and in Europe, what's the difference? Is there a difference in spiritual level of people?
Well, there can be a difference, but the bigger difference is the conditioning that people get in the different countries, you know. So for me, it's very interesting. I've been coming first to Russia 25 years ago, and traveling in the Soviet Union, not coming to Ukraine then, but recently 5 years ago I came to Ukraine, and now I've been visiting Ukraine for every 3 months since 5 years. So I have a nice group of people from Ukraine, maybe 1 or 2 from Russia, and these people have been conditioned actually by the Soviet Union, from their parents or their grandparents, you know. So they have issues about authority, for example. They don't really trust very much to authority, so that's an issue with me. And they have issues about survival because the economy is not so strong here in Ukraine. And they have other aspects of conditioning, like postponing. You know, one of the Ukrainian personal characteristics, I would say, is postponing until later. You know?
And could you spell it, please? What is, or how you understand it?
Postponing, to leave until later, you know, to do it later. I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week, you know, this kind of things. And for example, that's in contrast to Germany, where the people are extremely industrial and they work a lot, too much probably, but so they are working. They're very serious about their things, and they have a rather different conditioning. I mean, and in Spain, we have a new community that's just starting literally in the last month. And the Spanish people I've met so far, I don't really have a typical characteristic, I could say. They're probably more Ukrainian than they are German.
And
like
so you are familiar with different spiritual flows, and you've seen a lot of masters or teachers. And what's about what they like to talk a lot? What's their biggest idea? Is there
Well, I
something?
think the biggest idea that most teachers will talk about is the one that I suggested Osho was talking about. They would try to get people to see that this connection to the outer, the world outside, and hoping that through their desires being met, that they will then become happy, that this doesn't really work, you know. And therefore the masters generally, with different ideas, probably different angles, encouraging people to look inside. So I think every master basically talks about that difference. You know? We hope that some kind of satisfaction of our desires, like, you know, a new job, a new car, a new girlfriend or a new boyfriend, that these things will somehow make us happy. Yeah. So most people are living in this kind of circle of desire, you know, and then after some time it doesn't work, and then they look for an even better girlfriend or boyfriend, you know.
And it still don't help.
It helps a bit, of course, and it helps for some time, but it's not the solution if you really want to live in a completely different way. If you want to live in freedom, if you want to live in peace, that doesn't work.
Okay, then what's the highest human's goal?
Well, I would say it's to know yourself.
Through meditation, how
Meditation is a very useful technique. There are many kinds of meditation, and there are many other kinds of spiritual techniques. Yoga is another popular one. And these techniques can bring you to look inside. So that's a very important part. They can also bring you to have a quieter mind. That's also a very important part. So those two things would be kind of prerequisites. They would be like the things you need to do in the beginning to be ready then to know yourself.
Okay, and in one of your lectures, you told that once you lived in Papaji's house, it not always been like very peaceful days, and there was a hard ones. And could you please tell what's the benefits for a person who lives with his teacher when he starts to work with bad days? I mean, when bad things happens.
Well, first of all, I don't see life as good and bad. You know, I think this is a bit of Christian ideas about good and bad, you know, heaven and hell. So I don't really see life like that, you know. I see that all the things that happen to us have in them a possibility of us learning something about how we function. And if you live with a master, I didn't actually live in Papaji's house, I lived nearby.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I have had intense contact with him, he would act as a very strong mirror. So I would be looking into the mirror and I would have to see something about myself. So if you really want to become free of the stuff you've got inside you, then having an intense meeting with the master and staying around the master for some time, probably some years actually, that's the quickest and the best way to become spiritually free, if that's what you want.
And how then to solve the difficulties in life when some moments happen, what to do? Like
they happen. There are no difficulties.
Just so people have to take it. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, what can you do? If it's suddenly going to rain now, we get wet, you know? We don't have any choice, you know? Things like that happen all the time, you know? In a minute, maybe the mosquitoes will start biting us, you know? But there's nothing we can do, you know? We don't have any choice. So it's not really difficulties. It's just like, for example, because we're quite conscious people, we sprayed mosquito liquid everywhere and we've got little fires going, and hopefully that will deal with the mosquitoes, you know?
Yeah.
If we weren't so conscious, we would be bitten by the mosquitoes. So, you know, life is not really difficult or a problem. You just use your understanding of life to go into the next adventure.
And your doctrine is built on self-consciousness. And what is the role of subconsciousness in it? Well,
when you start to know yourself, you very quickly discover that inside, in what you would call the subconscious, there are certain kinds of structures. And these structures tend to repeat themselves into the consciousness. For example, a very common one is, I'm not good enough.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Almost everybody has that structure, right? And most people believe that they are not good enough, but everybody else is good enough. But unfortunately, when you scratch on the surface, you find almost everybody has that, you see?
Yeah.
So this is not a real thing, you know? Everybody can't be not good enough. So we can assume everybody's good enough. And this is only some kind of automatic message coming from the subconscious that was put there when we were very small. You know?
I see. And who puts it there?
Well, probably our parents put it there.
And is there any parents right now, for example, who don't do this and people are like living better life?
Well, for example, in our community in Germany, we had a little boy born in the community, and he lived in our community for 8 years.
Whoa.
And in this 8 years, I would say he was not given the sense that he wasn't good enough. You know, in fact, we encouraged him to develop himself in whatever way he wanted. You know, it was his freedom, you can say. And he got a few fathers, he got a few mothers from the community. Sometimes people visited and he would choose a new daddy for the weekend, you know, something like this. So I don't know how that kid's going to develop because he's still a kid, you know, but I would have strong hopes that in another 5 or 10 years we would discover that he's not walking around feeling I'm not good enough.
Right now, psychology is one of the best knowledges. Everyone loves it, and psychology gives a lot of formulas, the ideas how to solve the inside problems, and also the idea of Hellinger's family constellations. Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think about them?
Well, actually, I don't think about them. But if I would think about them, I would say that, you know, all these things can be useful, you know? Mm-hmm. But it's not going to bring you to freedom, you see? So the thing that's going to bring you to freedom is to realize you're already free, you see? It's very simple. It's actually very, very simple. And unfortunately, the problem with psychology is you go to a psychologist and you say, I really hate my father, you know? We always fight. Can you help me? And the psychologist goes, yes, yes, I can help you. And then for the next 20 weeks, you go and see him for an hour or two, and you talk about your relationship with your father, you know? So that kind of makes you feel like you have a problem.
Yes.
You know? And
you spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, so, and a lot of money on it.
Yeah. And so you started to loving this problem.
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, therefore, I doubt that will take away the problem of how you relate with your father, you know. It will probably make it a bit easier. And if your father goes to some other psychologist at the same time, there's some hope that, you know, things will get better.
Yes. Yeah? And you continue to develop yourself and you self-realize yourself. And what is motivating you to do it? To self-realization?
Well, I'm not self-realizing myself, really, no. I'm simply living in love.
Okay.
I mean, just to be, I don't want to be too clever on that answer. I mean, basically, you know, there came a point in my life, it was actually 15 years and 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So it was when I had gone from Osho, I got lots of benefit from those 15 years. I'd become rather quiet, you know, my mind was no longer busy as it was in the beginning. And I had some understanding, you know, and I had moved myself from being so busy on the outside to being more busy on the inside. Mm-hmm. And then I went to another master, who was called Papaji. And quite quickly, with his power, you could say, I was able to realize that actually there's nothing, there's nobody. There's just nobody. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I realized that, there was a profound shift. And that happened to me 25 years ago, with his help, with his support, if you like. And what happens then is that I realize I'm just the same as everybody. I'm one with everything. Mm-hmm. Life is no longer a problem. Life is just happening from moment to moment, and I'm part of this happening from moment to moment. And actually, it's a profound shift. It's a profound change.
I see. And okay, through what actions human potential opens from the best side?
Sorry?
Through what actions?
Yeah.
Human potential.
Yeah.
Person, each of us have some kind of potential.
Right.
And how can we open it from the best part? Because sometimes
I see, I understand now, yeah. Well, I would say that, you know, from this looking inside, from quietening the mind, becoming self-aware, you start to really know yourself. And, for example, you may start to realize that actually you're much more powerful. Maybe you start to realize that actually you're good enough. You might even discover you're, you know, beautiful or powerful, or you have some special attributes,
powers.
you know? You see, and so this is releasing your potential. You know, every human being has some kind of potential, and whether they meet this potential depends on whether they are ready to do the work on their subconscious structures to release enough that they are living who they really are. And really, and who they really are is nothing. Nobody, you see.
Okay. In your film, Blueprints for Awakening, Wisdom of Masters, you ask one of the masters, what you see when you look into your people's eyes.
Right.
Now, when you have your own community, how could you answer it?
Well, when I look into people's eyes, I see love.
And what color of it? Or
well, it doesn't really have a color. It's more, it has an energetic sense, you can say, of love. You know, so you could say it can be stronger or weaker, but it doesn't usually have a color.
But how could you describe it?
Well, for me, love is a kind of energy. It's nothing to do with boys and girls and falling in love, you know, and candlelight dinners. You know, that's not what I would call love. You know. Actually, I would call that a disease, actually.
A disease?
Yeah, but that would require, you know, a bit of explaining, I think, yeah?
Well...
You want me to explain that?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to know.
Well, you know, we have been, through the centuries probably, we've been conditioned to believe that our most true happiness will come when we can find somebody to love us.
Yes.
That's what we've been conditioned to believe. Yeah. So we spend a lot of energy when we're young to look for such a person, and we come in a relationship with them, try out a few things together, and if it all seems positive, we sign a contract. It's called marriage.
Yes.
You know? And probably that's not really going to work, because nobody can give you love. You can play together, you can access your own love, and if it's a very nicely balanced, kind of harmonious relationship, then you could maybe both live in love. But the love is actually your own love. And if you think it comes from the other person, what happens when that person might spend an evening with one of your friends or something, you know? Then of course you might get jealous.
Yeah.
And people do get jealous, you know, and then things break down, you know. So of course to have the person who's bringing you the love that's going to make you feel, you know, satisfied and happy and, you know, peaceful maybe, go off with somebody else is a major shock to your system, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's the way to go if you want to access real love. The way to go is inside yourself, you see.
Okay. And the last question. It's the 8th time, yes? You're in Kiev?
The what?
The eighth time you're in Kiev right now?
No. I've been coming for 5 years, every 3 months. So that's sort of like...
I see.
And I come also for 2 retreats a year. So I've probably been here over 20 times.
I see. And you practice the silent practice. I don't know how to say it. When nobody talks. Yes. And what's the idea? How it helps people not to?
Well, I wouldn't call it really a practice, but as part of what we do together, we sit in silence and we have our eyes closed And what happens after some time is that you experience yourself as being part of oneness.
Wonders?
Oneness.
Oneness. Oh, oneness.
Oneness. Yeah. You just experience yourself less separate, less particular, and you feel yourself as part of a kind of greater energy field, something like this, which could be called a greater love field.
Love field.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, John David.
Very good, very nice. Thank you.